Hi, my name is Tanushri. Maybe you've met me on another Decrypted by Us video. Today I'm back making a brand new one on time management and goal setting tips, sharing just some of the strategies that I've picked up in my almost 4 years of being a computer science student. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Staying up to date with Decrypted by Us is a great way to follow the lives of real college students studying computer science and related fields, and hopefully build your interest, ease your transition into computer science. So with that, let's get started. This is going to be a short video with 2 sections. The first, I'll talk about some general time management tips that have been helpful to me. And in the second, I'll discuss some assignment-specific strategies for tackling a CS project. So general tip number 1 is to block off enough time. I like to do at least 3 to 5 hours, the more time the better, especially when you're starting out a new project, just to account for any unexpected hurdles. Sometimes you have issues with your environment, bug pops up and you don't really know what's causing it, and all of this adds up. So it's easier to have a consecutive stretch of time than, say, do 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, 30 minutes at night. I also like to think of that time as this long trial and error session, because a lot of computer science is just that, trial and error. And in order for that to be productive, you have to remember what you've tried, what has failed, and what has worked in order to keep building off of that. General tip number 2 is to keep track of what you've tried and what the outcome was. So in other words, be systematic about your coding and your debugging. I like to have a pencil and paper next to me in order to take notes on what I'm doing. And this kind of helps me divide my attention between the screen and the pencil and paper. And I find that, taking handwritten notes is a way for me to take a step back before I'm implementing a new approach, really think about it in my head. Is it logical? Is it going to work? And go in with something that I'm more confident is actually going to be successful. This is just a strategy that I have to make my thought process more thorough. So pencil and paper is a great way to be methodical about how you're working. Tip number 3 is to know when to stop. I've talked a lot about, having enough time and working a lot, but also make sure to listen to your body. If you find yourself going in circles, take a break and come back with a fresh mindset. Sleep is really important for that fresh mindset. I know how tough it is to step away from a project or a task that you've been working on and you're like, okay, as soon as I get this done, I'm gonna stop. But that takes so much longer than you think. I have tried to be more disciplined with myself and say, okay, if I need to use the bathroom, if I need to eat, if I'm tired, I will just step away. And it's okay if I haven't accomplished what I wanted to do for the day. Tomorrow is going to be so much more productive. And that has really done wonders for me not feeling burned out with CS. So listen to your body and take breaks. And finally, there's no right amount of time to spend on an assignment. If an assignment takes you twice as long as it takes someone else, so be it. That was definitely me in my first few years and still is me. But I find that comparing my learning curve to other people's learning curves just introduces self-doubt into my work, and that's not fun at all. So focusing on your personal goals, on building your own skill set, and feeling pride in what you have accomplished is a good way to stay positive and make sure that you are learning for yourself. So your timeline is your own timeline. As for assignment-specific advice, the first piece of advice is probably something that you've heard over and over again, and honestly, I think it's kind of an obnoxious piece of advice. It's to start early. But as college students, starting early is so much easier said than done because there's so much going on and it's hard to find a large chunk of time to really dedicate to working on a project. So my advice for starting early is to ease yourself into it. I like the first day of working on an assignment to be just reading the handout and just getting familiar with the support or stencil code, figuring out what documentation I need to use, what lectures are relevant, identifying what I don't know and places that I can go to learn that information. I think of it as landscaping, and then on day 2, once I've identified all of that information, I feel a lot more confident going in and starting to program. This is something that works for me. I know other people are a lot more comfortable if they just start coding immediately, so try it out, see what works for you. But if you're someone who often feels overwhelmed with an assignment, easing yourself in is a great way to make that process much more enjoyable. Another first day task can be coming up with checkpoints and creating a project schedule. And I like to build a lot of extra time into my schedule. Say I have 7 days to finish a project, I'll come up with 3 to 4 goals and plan to finish each one in a day. But I'm not going to finish the project in 3 to 4 days, but I'm instead building in extra time to deal with all of the bugs and problems that are going to inevitably pop up. So allocating double the amount of time than expected is a really good way to make sure that you're not falling behind and you're not pulling an all-nighter the night before a project is due. Another tip is to compare your project to past CS projects and see if there are any overlapping concepts or approaches. This is a really good way to also solidify concepts that you learned in a previous project because you're going back and revisiting it. So you're kind of getting two benefits from doing this. A really important tip is to design first and then code. Using pencil and paper can be a really good way to give your eyes and your wrists a break from computer use, and it also helps you think through your logic before implementing it on the screen. At least for me, I find that the freedom of pencil and paper and being able to draw, use arrows, sketch things out, helps me really think through an approach and make sure that every single step is logically connected. I often get very, very confused if I try to implement logic immediately by coding, so pencil and paper. Related to that, make sure to code in small chunks. When I was in my first year of college, I definitely did a lot of projects by trying to write the entire thing and just pressing the go button to see if it would work, and it never did. Big surprise, because what you should do is write a really small piece of functionality, make 100% sure it works, and then build more functionality on top of that. This helps you know as you're going along where problems are arising from because you've thoroughly tested every single part of your project. So coding incrementally will save you a lot of time in the long run. It also is easier to document, to write comments, because you're thinking about each tiny piece of your project more thoroughly as you're going along. Especially the worst feeling is waking up in the morning and reading code and not really understanding what you were thinking as you were writing it. If you code incrementally, you've likely put a lot more thought into every single piece of your work, so you're less likely to face that problem. And finally, make sure to save your work often and make copies. This is a really good way to preserve baseline functionality, and if you end up making edits and they don't work, you always have something to revert back to. So save often, make copies. That'll make you feel just a lot more comfortable as you go along with your experimenting. So all in all, these are some of my strategies for being a CS student. I'm definitely the type of person who likes to give myself a lot of time to use pencil and paper. I try as best as I can to be nice to myself and nice to my body, no matter how frustrated or tired I get. CS is a long journey, and it's fun to grow as a problem solver, but you don't necessarily have to put a lot of pressure on yourself to excel at first. Just like coding incrementally, try to learn incrementally, learn on your own timeline, and it will all be worth it in the end. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and keep following Decrypted by us.